So I hope everyone is able to see my screen. So today we are going to see data science applications in banking and finance sector, right? This is what our today webinar is going to be. So today we'll start with the fundamentals, right? Because I'm sure that you all must have heard these buzzwords or keywords around you, right? Data science, analytics, machine learning, AI, deep learning, and whatnot. And rather than getting curious, most of the people get depressed because they are not able to make sense what exactly a data science is, what exactly machine learning is, what is the difference between data science and machine learning, then what is analytics, right? And it's understandable because this industry, I mean, currently it's not really, I would not say a nascent or a new industry, but it's evolving at a rapid pace, right? So what we used to do, say, around 5 years ago, now it has become completely obsolete, and there is something new which has come into the market, right? And accordingly, a new skill sets gets evolved, new roles gets created, and then you have these changes in the nomenclature as well. Now, most of the times, if someone says analytics, data science, or machine learning or AI, they generally mean the same thing in a broader sense, right? But when we dig deeper, there are finer differences between these fields, but the fundamental remains same, right? And the fundamental is analytics, right? So today's agenda would be, first we will look at what exactly analytics is, right? And why we need to implement or why we need to study analytics in the first place. Now, once we get a hang of what analytics is, we can go through a typical project life cycle, right? A lot of times we hear that this has been achieved by machine learning, or he has developed an algorithm, or this company has come out with a state of the art machine learning algorithm, etc. But then how does a typical project life cycle looks like, especially in the analytics environment, right? That is something which we are going to tackle next. And third, of course, what are the challenges and benefits of using and implementing analytics, right? So a very basic question, right? What is analytics? So as we know that we as say human being, we always rely on our past experiences, right? Now sometimes those past experiences are not quantifiable or not tangible, right? Something which had happened with you a long time ago, basis that you create some understanding, you sort of create a view about the world, about the situation, because you think that that's what happened 5 years ago, and that would happen again if that situation comes across, right? But what analytics does, analytics puts a framework around it, right? Basically, everything is driven by data, right? Everything is driven by data. Whatever we do in our life, knowingly or unknowingly, we are using our past. What is our past experiences, basically, right? Our past experience is nothing but a data point, right? If I say, for example, whenever it rains, there is a leakage in my house, right? Now, if this has been my experience, this is a data point, right? Because I know whenever there is a rain, there is a leakage. So whenever, on the onset of monsoon, as it is right now, right? In few weeks, the monsoon will hit the shores of South India, and it will sort of start entering the Indian landscape. We would start thinking about, okay, there could be a problem of leakage in my house, and I should better do something about it. So essentially, what we did there, we looked at our historical data point. We understood the consequences, or we predicted an outcome, and then we took some action, right? So that's nothing but analytics in a nutshell, right? Now if we have to apply that analogy to a corporate or to professional scenario or to an industry scenario, basically what we do is we acquire data, right? We analyze the data. Now through that analysis we detect some patterns, right? Which helps us predict the outcomes, or it gives us some insights which help us in taking some decisive action, right? So essentially there are two aspects. One is data analytics and second is data visualizations, right? So if we if you are to look at a traditional, or I would say an official definition as such for data analytics, it is basically a leverage data in a particular functional process to enable context specific insight that is actionable. So that is the same thing which we just discussed, right? So this is just putting it in a structured framework kind of way. So that is essentially a data analytics, that you have a raw data, you process that data, you gain the information, and that information gives you a wisdom, right, to take some action. So that's what analytics is. Now, data visualization is one aspect of data analytics where you visualize the data, right? Now, what happens? There are two distinct advantages of data visualization, and you must have heard around you, if you are into a market for a specific job, you must have seen roles such as data visualization expert or a Tableau developer or a Power BI developer. What they do essentially is that they take the data, they visualize the data in a such a way that it would give you some insights, it would give you some inference, right? And it's almost a common sense that whenever you look at something visually, right, if something is presented to you in a visual sense, uh, it's very intuitive to understand, right? And that's what data visualization helps us. So essentially, what is analytics is basically data acquisition, analyzing, understanding the pattern, and basis those patterns, you gain some insights, you do some prediction, which helps you take some decisive action, right? But then why study analytics, right? Because, and I'm sure that you must have been hearing this phrase for a long time now, that data is the new oil, right? Data is a very crucial entity. Almost nothing in this world currently runs without leveraging the data, right? And the most common example is all the mobile apps, right? Nowadays, whenever you install any app, right, it's almost all the apps are free, or they're free to some extent, right? And we feel that, okay, we are getting something for free, it's so awesome, right? But it's not really free, right? There are no free lunches in the world. What is happening? In place of you using that app for free, they are using your data, right? Once you log in, you share some personal information with them. Once you go through that app, it basically gives them your behavior, right? That what exactly do you like to surf, what exactly do you like to watch, right? What are your preferences, right? And that helps us understand you as a person. Now once they understand you as a person, and I'm sure that everyone must have faced this at some time or another, that whenever you log into Facebook or whenever you are searching something on Google, you keep on getting these ads, right? And when you suddenly see an ad and suddenly you realize, yeah, actually I was about to buy shoes, good that I saw this ad, let me go and buy these shoes right away, right? And we think that it's a coincidence, but it's not, right? There are no coincidences. It's a purely data driven strategy which these companies use, right? So data is the new oil, and if you see the graph of the data volumes, right, and it's not even in giga or peta, it's zettabytes, right? And it's growing in an exponential rate, right? Just imagine that the the very gadget which generates data at every second, right, which captures our every moment, which is nothing but our cell phone, right? It's with us almost 24/7. Whatever you do on that, right, gets captured. Whenever you visit any shop, whenever you are streaming a movie, you are generating the new data, right? And all this data is combined together by some state of the art infrastructure, state of the art algorithms by Googles and Facebooks and Amazons of the world to create that persona, right, and predict almost, to 100% accuracy that what you would be interested in, right? And that's how these companies thrive, right? So it's completely data driven. And if you look at some of the statistics, like this industry, and of course this is the consequences of what has been happening, right? It's been growing at a healthy rate of around 24%, right? Almost 60% of the analytics revenue in India comes from analytic exports to the USA. Now, why specific to USA, or why specific to this developed country? Is because the data gets generated in a very organized way, right? We as a country, especially in India, a lot of sectors are unorganized, right? Now that picture is slowly changing. But if you look at, say, for example, groceries, you still have these mom and pop stores, you still have those local kirana walas, right? And whoever purchases or whoever buys items from them, that data doesn't get captured anywhere. So they are still lagging on that front. But in the Western countries, the scenario is completely different, right? So there is a huge demand, there is a huge requirement of using analytics. Now, And of course, on the job market also, it's a very, what we call nowadays, it's a hot skill, right? It's a hot job right now. Data science has been termed as the sexiest job of 21st century, right? And deservedly so. And within that, the domain which we are going to focus in this today's webinar is the finance and banking industry, right? And again, it's pretty obvious, right? Because finance, at its core, is a number-driven industry, right? Nothing in finance can happen without numbers, right? It's all, whenever there is money, there is going to be a number, right? So it's a huge potential, huge demand, especially in the finance and banking industry, right? Now, let us look at analytics landscape, right? So when we say analytics, what exactly do we mean? So there are basically four stages or four aspects to the analytics, right? So the first, very basic, is descriptive. So what do we mean by descriptive? Just understanding what is happening. So say, for example, you are a branch manager for an HDFC bank, right? And you're sitting in your branch and you get a report every week that what is my total number of fixed deposits, right? Now he or she must have been given some target, right? That they have to have certain number of fixed deposit accounts opened in a week or in a month. So he can just see that number there, that okay, the current active fixed deposits are 10 and my target was 15, so let me do something about it. The next stage would be, if he sees that there are just 10 number of accounts open, he can go on to the next stage, which is diagnostic, right? That why is it happening? Why the numbers are so low, right? There must be some factors. Now, one of the most obvious factor right now is, of course, the pandemic situation, right? People are a little bit resistant to invest because they don't know what will happen next. There is an uncertainty, right? So people tend to not spend or even not to invest. They want to see their money in front of their eyes, right? So, and that do happen a lot of times. So why is it happening? What are the factors driving this particular situation? Now, let's say you understand the drivers, you understand the factor. The next step is predictive, right? So what is going to happen? If this is the current stage, what are the number of FD accounts I can expect to be opened in next week, next month, next quarter, right? If I get that prediction, right, even if it's not 100% accurate, and it won't be, right, in any realistic situation, there won't be 100% accuracy. But if I understand that, if I get that prediction with a reasonable amount of accuracy, I can take some action around it, right? So if I get a prediction that in the next month or 2 months, the situation is going to remain same, the number of accounts, which will get opened weekly would be very less than what my benchmark is, then I shall better get going and preempt this situation by taking some action, taking some decisions, right? So that's a predictive analytics. And what is prescriptive analytics? It goes even one step further, right? That if this is what I think is going to happen, what should you do, right? And that's where your AI, or essentially deep learning, comes into the picture, right? Where it doesn't only predict, but it also recommends that what you should do in such scenario, right? And there are n number of examples, right? Say, for example, in case of video analytics, if you have a CCTV camera installed and if you have advanced video analytics implemented, it will not only detect a face, but it will also tell you, is it an outsider or is insider, right? Is it more likely to be a thief or is it more likely to be a civilian or a normal person, right? At AI, deep learning has gone to an extreme stage right now, right? As I said, it's constantly evolving. So that's what prescriptive analytics is, right? Now let us look at the landscape from roles perspective, right? Which is a more practical thing to consider from your point of view, right? So say if you say that, okay, I am a graduate in so and so field, I have some work experience, or I am a fresher, what sort of opportunities lie for me? If I want to target a certain role in analytics, what are the type of roles available, right? What is the competency required, right? Because that would help you create your own learning path, right? That would help you prioritize what you need to learn to sort of reduce that learning curve, right? And get into the job market and grab that job as soon as possible, right? So I would say from a 30,000 feet perspective, there are essentially two roles. There are, okay, if you sort of dig deeper, there are going to be n number of roles, right? Because as I mentioned, the field has gone so vast that there are roles for each niche skills nowadays, right? There are roles for only one algorithm implementation. That to that level, the sophistication has been achieved. But if you look at from a broader perspective, there are two sort of roles. One is data scientist and one is data analyst, right? So essentially, what is the difference, right? So basically, data scientist is someone who is data analyst plus something more, right? And data analyst, we can sort of say it's a building block. This is something where you can start your journey into analytics world, right? So data analyst is someone who will access the data, who will clean the data, transform the data, and grab some basic insights or inferences, right? Whereas data science, it sort of takes it to the next level in terms of accessing various kind of data, right? And it has an involvement in a lot of other stages apart from just extracting the data and getting some insights, right? So the scope for data science is bigger, right? It involves a lot of things, right from extracting data till deployment of the solution. Whereas data analyst will be more focused on getting the data, drawing some insights. So that's where data visualization also can come into the picture, where you are creating the visualization dashboards to gain some trend analysis, to gain some insight, right? And you can share that with your client or with your department head, which would assist them in some decision making, right? So essentially, data science deals with computer science, machine learning. So machine learning is nothing but a little bit advanced stage of data science. So with data science, you use some of the traditional statistical models. With machine learning, you use some of the advanced algorithms, which have been developed and which are being developed as you speak, right? It has to do with software development, because once you sort of create a solution, how can you package it? How can you publish it as an app which everyone can use, right? So you have to have understanding of software development cycle or software development packages. You have to have understanding of data tools like Spark, Hadoop, because as a data scientist, you would be working with a data which consists of lakhs or even crores records, right? So you have to have understanding of what are sort of data storage systems, right? What are the sort of uh, uh, data infrastructure which is used for storing this data and accessing the data, right? Whereas data analytics or data analyst would be more focused on data management, creating reports or dashboards, which essentially comes under the BI umbrella, business intelligence umbrella, right? And sharing that with the client, right? So this is a difference, but ultimately, as I mentioned, that you would start your journey with the data analyst role, but essentially you would want to grow into data scientist. You would want to grow further, where you have the complete understanding of the end-to-end supply chain of analytics, right? Right from how do you understand the problem till how do you deploy the problem and how do you add the value, right? And why that is essential, we will see later on, and we will sort of touch those topics when we go through the real life case studies as well. Right. So this is a typical project life cycle for analytics, right? It starts from business understanding, because let's face it, right? Uh, so around say 10 years ago, uh, if you look at a typical data scientist 10 years ago, they would say that, okay, I don't understand what telecom is, I don't understand what insurance is, I don't understand what banking is. I understand data and I understand mathematics and statistics. You give me the data, you tell me what to do, what do you want to achieve, I will create it and I will give it to you. The rest is not my problem. That was how the typical data scientist would work around say 10 years ago. But now the picture has changed completely. When someone says a role of a data scientist, it is assumed that you would take the end-to-end responsibility, right? And that's why today's session is data science applications in banking and finance sector, and not data science in general, because data science in general is not more, is no more relevant now. Now the roles have evolved to such an extent that in addition to the mathematical and statistical understanding, you have to have a domain understanding, right? And it's kind of vicious circle, isn't it? I mean, unless you get an exposure to a domain, you won't understand the domain, and if you don't understand the domain, you won't be able to implement any solution. So that's a bit of a, I would say, ironical situation there, but that's how it is currently. And that's why it's very, very imperative to focus on one industry, right? Gain enough knowledge so that you understand what are the problems, what are the pain points, what are the challenges in those industries, and how you can resolve them, right? Because that's the crux, right? Unless and until you don't know the problem, you won't be able to solve it. So the typical life cycle starts with business understanding. Of course, once you understand the domain, you have to understand the data, right? You have to map the data with your domain understanding. Then you prepare the data. Now, what do we mean by data preparation? We will sort of double click on it in the next slides, right? Then you actually create your modeling solution, right? A predictive solution or a deterministic model or any statistical model which is appropriate for that situation. Then you evaluate. You evaluate whether my model is predicting to a reasonable accuracy or not, whether my model is robust enough to be used in the future for a data which is going to come into the organization, right? Now, basis that evaluation, you may have to sort of go back and forth on your business understanding, right? Because the things which you assumed might not be true, right? And there will be a few things which you did not even consider, right? Which turned out to be very critical while gathering the data or while creating the solution. So there will be always a sort of a feedback or a loop in this particular life cycle or a workflow, right? Now, once your model is done, you will deploy it. So what do we mean by deploy? You will deploy it in a server, or you deploy it somewhere where it can be accessed for predicting, right? Now, once it starts giving you the predictions or output, right, it will be in a constant assessment mode, right? Whatever I predicted, was it really true? Or whatever I predicted was way different than what happened in reality. So you have to constantly assess, and that assessment will also shape your business understanding, right? And say, for example, it's a very crude example, but if you say that there will be an assumption that, say, Cheteshwar Pujara is a test batsman, and hence he won't be a good fit in a T20 setup. He won't be a good fit in an IPL, right? But what if he made some changes to his technique and ultimately he is able to deliver into a T20 setup as well? Now that changes your complete understanding of Cheteshwar Pujara as a test batsman, right? So it's a constant feedback loop, right? You build, you deploy, you assess, and you shape your business understanding. And it goes on and on until you achieve, you reach at a stage where your model is robust enough to predict with a very high accuracy, right? And which helps you take some decision which will add value to your organization, right? So this is the typical workflow in analytics. Now let's see each stage one by one, right? So the first stage is business understanding. Now, there are 4 stages or 4 sub-stages to a business understanding, right? So the first is pain point. Why would anyone want to use analytics, right? Do we use analytics just because we want to do it, or just because everyone does it? Not really, no, right? There has to be some value add, because when you are trying to implement an analytics solution, when we are trying to implement a data science or a machine learning solution, it costs some money to the organization, right? They have to have that infrastructure, they have to hire team members with the relevant skill sets, they have to pay their salary, right? So there is a reason behind why someone would want to do an analytics on a certain situation. And how do you find out that why? You find out what are the pain points of my organization or a business, right? And how can I solve it? So once you understand the problem area or a pain point, you define a business question around it. So this is my pain point, and to relieve this pain point, this is a sort of business question, which I need to solve. Now, business question will be a little bit functional, or business question, I could say it's more of a non-mathematical question, right? And to implement any sort of analytics, to implement a data science or a machine learning solution, you have to quantify, or you have to have a strict direction as to what you need to achieve. So that's where problem statement comes in. So we convert the business question into a problem statement. So problem statement, it's a definite statement with a very concrete clarity on what is the output, that we can expect out of this particular solution. And the fourth is, of course, the scope of the solution, constraints, and success criteria, right? So let's take an example from finance industry itself. So let's take an example of an insurance industry, right? Now, in insurance industry also, you have different insurance verticals, right? You have health insurance, you have life insurance, you have general insurance. So let's take something which is currently very relevant to every one of us, which is health insurance, right? So now there are a lot of, so I have worked with some of the health insurance companies in India also, and as well as abroad. And there is one peculiar problem or one peculiar challenge which every health insurer faces is the early claim, right? So what do I mean by early claim is that, say for example, you buy a health insurance policy today, right? So once you buy the policy, there is going to be a 30-day waiting period. So within 30 days, even if you get hospitalized or even if something happens to you, unfortunately, you won't be able to claim because there is a 30-day cooling or a waiting period. And it's there for almost all the regions. I mean, in India as well as abroad, right? But what if after buying the policy within the next 40 days or 60 days or within 1 year, if someone puts in a claim, right? So generally for each company, the criteria would be different as to what constitutes an early claim. But let's take a very simple example that if a customer, if insured person puts in a claim within 1 year of buying a policy, it's an early claim. And that's the problem for an insurer, right? Why? Because what happens that insurer has to make sure that it has enough amount of money in its kitty to take care of any claims which might come in the future, right? And generally the assumption is that the sort of claims which you can expect are 1, 2, or 3 years down the line, right? That's a standard assumption. If the claims come early, then that's not a very desirable situation for a health insurer, because then it involves that right after selling a policy, I need to sort of take care of the additional cost, right, of that claim, because claim won't be in thousands, claim will be in lakhs, 5 lakhs, 10 lakhs, 15 lakhs, right? So it's always preferable for a company to insure those people from whom of course, the ideal situation is to not receive any claim whatsoever, right? That's a dream of every insurance company, because that's how they can be profitable. That's how they make their profits, right? Not everyone puts in a claim in their lifetime. But if I could reduce the number of people, or if I could find out the number of people who might put an early claim, and if I say, for example, charge them more, or if I don't issue them a policy, it might save me some cost, right? So that's a pain point, the early claims. So how can you convert it into a business question? So the business question could be, can we predict early claims for a better cost management, right? So if I can predict early claim for any customer, it would help me take some proactive action on, right? Now, what sort of action we could take, how it is managed, we can sort of touch base in the later slides, right? So then what would be a problem statement, right? As a data scientist, right? As an analytics consultant or analytics manager, what is it that I'm trying to solve? What would be the output of my solution? So it would be for each new prospective customer, whenever a new customer comes in, right, fills up the form online, offline, in whatever way, I need to predict the early claims propensity in real time, right? So for example, if I want to buy a health insurance policy right now, and if I sign up on a particular portal, I fill in my information, I should be able to predict at that time itself how likely this person is going to file an early claim, right? If I see that there is a high likelihood that he will file an early claim, I need to be cautious about it. And if I know for sure, or if I know with a reasonable accuracy that he is safe, he might not file an early claim, then I'll go ahead and let him purchase the policy, right? Now, what will be the scope? Of course, scope is a sort of around claims. So scope will be just predicting the claims, early claim situation, right? And nothing else. What is the constraint? So constraint will be, we will be able to do this only for the customers or leads who would provide us the required information, right? If I don't know anything about the customer, I won't be able to predict anything. So you see a lot of time we go onto a certain portal, we sign up, but whenever whenever there is a requirement form pops up, we just close it and we get away from them, right? Now the lead gets created at their end. Whenever you sign up using an email, they know that certain someone is interested. But if you don't fill the information, they don't know anything about you, right? And that will not help us solve anything. So the constraint will be that we have to have enough information on the customer, which is nothing but qualified leads, is what called in digital marketing terms, right? And of course, the success criteria is what, why I am trying to build this model, because I need to reduce the early claim percentage, right? Because that's what I'm doing, right? Because if that doesn't happen, then there is no value add to me, and there is no point in doing all this exercise, right? So there has to be a very definite and concrete success criteria, right? So in this case, the success criteria would be I should see some significant drop in my early claim percentage, because me as an organization, say for example, I am HDFC Argo Health Insurance. Even today I experience some early claims, right? And there will be some numbers, and there will be some reports showcasing the trend that okay, my early claim percentage has been increasing by 5% or 8% year over year, right? Or in terms of absolute numbers. So last year I received this much early claims. This year I'm about to receive this much early claims. So if I see after implementing the model, if I see the drop in that, I would say that my model is a success. But how much drop is significant enough to say that my model is a success? That is something which is in a way subjective. That is something which will be defined with all stakeholders involved, right? Now let's look at the second step. Once you have the problem statement defined, scope, criteria, success, etc. defined, the next is data understanding, right? Now you want to solve for early claim prediction. But then what is the sort of data which I have access to? So the first step is data sources, right? Now in case of this particular scenario, this is a very sort of a simple illustration, right? Just for understanding this concept, that in summary, I would need 4 type of data sources, right? I would need claims data, right? In the past few years, who have sort of filed for claims, how many claims were early, right? Were there any fraud, right? The second sort of data is customer data, where I would look at the customer profile, right? Whenever you sort of try to purchase a policy, a certain personal information is asked, right? Such as your age, marital status, number of dependents, occupation, PIN code, pre-existing diseases, right? If at all you have some pre-existing diseases, what are those diseases? So like if you have blood pressure, diabetes, hypertension, etc., right? So this is a second data source. Now third data source is a policy. You must have seen on Policy Bazaar or even any insurer's website that any single insurer has multiple products, right? So when you go to buy an insurance policy, you see a different products like Optima Plus and in Self Assure. There will be some fancy names given, right? So for example, here we can see there are 3 type of products. There's a Health Plus, Health Optima, Health Umbrella, and each product will have some distinct features, right? Maybe Health Plus doesn't cover hypertension or psychological disorders, whereas Health Optima covers all the possible diseases. Maybe in Health Plus, there is a restriction on what kind of room you can sort of take in a hospital while hospitalization, right? Maybe the deluxe room is not covered, whereas in Health Umbrella, the deluxe room is covered, or there is no cap on room rent. You can take any room, and as long as the total bill is within the sum insured, you would be able to file a claim for it. And I'm sure that at some point or another, you would have come across this situation, right? And if by God grace, if that has not happened with you, which is a good thing, you must have seen around you that people are running from pillar to post to get those medical bills, file for claims, and there is a lot of back and forth between insurer and insured, right? That okay, this is not covered, this is covered, okay, this has these terms and conditions which you did not read, etc., and etc., right? So products are basically policies with different features or different terms and conditions, right? Whatever suits you, you go ahead with that product. So what are the features of this product? So what sort of sum insured we have, right? So someone must have taken a coverage of say 10 lakh, someone must have taken a coverage of 11 lakh or 5 lakh as per his or her affordability, right? And how many people are insured? So if it's a family floater, so you understand the difference between family floater and individual, right? If it's a family floater insurance coverage, you can insure multiple people, right? Mostly your the dependents, mostly your spouse, children, or your parents, right? So it basically gives you an idea in terms of how many people have been insured in this particular policy. So this is the policy level details. And the fourth is a credit score. Now, I hope everyone is aware of what credit score is, but if not, let me give you a very brief understanding of it. Is that credit score is calculated basis your payment behavior, right? So your credit card bills, the sort of loans you have taken, right? Be it a personal loan or home loan, right? And it is mapped with your age, it is mapped with your income, it is mapped with your uh, uh, EMIs, right? In terms of where you're able to pay or where you're able to close the loan in time, right? Have you defaulted on any EMIs, right? Basis that a score is calculated. So basically credit score tells me how reliable or how trustworthy or how risk-free a particular customer is, right? Because if I see, because the range of the credit score is between 300 and 900, right? So a higher the number, better is your credit score. So someone with say an 850 score, I know that this customer has taken a lot of credit, a loan, or he has a credit card, but he has been paying his bills on time, right? He doesn't have any anomaly or any problem in his payment behavior. So this is a very reliable customer. So if this sort of customer comes to me asking for an insurance policy, I would be more inclined towards issuing a policy because I know that he will be honest in his premium payment, right? He will not default. He is more trustworthy than someone say a credit score of 300. Now, this is not the only benchmark, but this is one of the benchmark which is used. And this sort of data is what we call an external data, because this credit score is calculated by certain credit bureaus. Like for example, you have CIBIL, right, which is one of the famous credit bureaus, and a lot of data is sourced from CIBIL. Of course, it's a paid data, right? You pay a certain amount of money to get these credit scores on your customers, and this is used by banks, this is used by insurance companies to assess their customer, right? So that they can decide whether to give this customer a loan or not, or whether to give this customer a policy or not. So when we look at data, essentially, there are two types of data sources: internal data sources and external data sources, right? So internal is claims, policy, customer data, which I have obtained, right, on my own. The external data is something like credit score, which I do not have ownership of, but I can definitely source that data from the particular vendor or a partner by paying them certain amount of money. Now, second is data availability and digital maturity of the client. See, a lot of time what happens, say for example, we are creating this early claim prediction model, and basis your experience in this particular industry or basis whatever senior personas you have in your company, you think that say for example, if you're an agent driven company, someone like Aditya Birla or LIC. Now you know that LIC or Aditya Birla, they primarily run their operations through an agent network, right? The online presence is there, but the primary source of acquiring customers is through agents. They have agent offices and etc. Now somehow someone feels that I need to know, for a particular customer, who is that agent who has sold this policy, right? I need to know that agent's age. I need to know that agent's education, because I think an agent who is probably a graduate or a postgraduate will be, will most probably bring a good customer, and an agent who is probably just, a 10th standard pass, or who is not even a graduate, he might not be clever enough, or he might not be capable enough to bring in good quality of customers. Maybe that's my assumption. And a management says, let's do one thing. While creating this model, let's get the data on agent's age and agent's education, right? Now you go to the distribution head and tells him that I need this data, and he goes back to his manager and see if that data is available. And suddenly you realize that whenever a certain agent joins a company, the age, say for example, the education field is not mandatory. Sorry. Uh, any any concern? I hope I'm audible enough. Okay. So basically, what we mean by data availability is that you need certain data to create your solution, but maybe that data is not available with your organization. Maybe I did not capture agent's age or agent's education, and hence that data is not available, right? And that will happen a lot of times. So that's the second thing. What is available? What is not available? Because basis that you have to define your scope and criteria of success, right? Maybe agent's education was a very critical variable, very critical information, but you are not able to get that. Maybe you have to go back to your client or your department head and tell him that since this data is not available, my model might not be as accurate as we expected it to be, right? So that's the second step. Now, third is data acquisition. Now, say whatever data you need, like in this case, this is the data I need, right? I need claims data, I need customer data, policy data, and credit score, right? The next step is data acquisition. Now that this data is available, how do I acquire this data? How do I fetch this data? Because in any organization, and particularly in finance and financial industry or financial services industry, the data is generally not stored at a single place, right? What we call a data warehouse. Generally, there is a data warehouse in each company, each organization, but data is distributed, right? So maybe the claims data is available in a different system. Customer data is available in a CRM system. A policy data is there in the data warehouse, and the credit score is going to be shared by an external agency, which is going to be in the form of Excel sheets or CSV sheets, right? So how do you acquire this data, right? How do you get access to this data? That is the second thing, right? Now, once you get that once you understand the sources, the fourth is data storage systems, right? So now I know that claims data is stored in a different system. But what sort of system is that? Is it a RDBMS? Is it a relational database system? Is it a NoSQL database like MongoDB, right? Is it something else like some different distributed data system, right? Like Hadoop of the world, right? So I need to understand, or is it cloud? Nowadays, you see a lot of companies are moving their data to cloud, right? AWS, Azure, or GCP, right? And you know a lot of other enterprise cloud management companies in the market today. So a lot of companies nowadays store their data in the cloud, right? And most of the time, all the organizations, especially in the financial services industry, would follow a hybrid model. So some of the data would be in a physical servers, right? And some of the data would be in cloud. So you have to have a strategy to make sure that you are able to extract that data and bring it at one place so that you can do something about it, right? So that's about data preparation or data understanding, right? Now, the next part is data preparation. For example, say you have got all the data you need, right? So now you have claims data. So claims data basically it gives you information on customer, the policy ID, policy type, whether he has filed a claim or not, yes or no, how many number of claims he has filed, how many, within how many days he has filed a claim from purchasing the policy, because that will tell us whether it was an early claim or it was not an early claim, right? So as you can see here, this person has filed a claim within 48 days. That means it's an early claim, right? This person has filed a claim 389 days, right? Almost after 1 year after purchasing the policy. So it's not an early claim, right? So on and so forth. Another important piece of information is whether it was a fraud. So what happens whenever someone files a claim, right? Irrespective of it is an early claim or not an early claim, but more so in early claim, every company, every insurance company has a fraud investigation team, right? They go on the field, they sort of research about it, they investigate the incidents, right? And if at all, if they feel there is a fraud here, right? I mean, the entire scenario of filing the claim was a fraudulent, right? Then it is termed as fraud. And of course, whatever the claim was, it gets denied. And the person could face some criminal consequences as well, right? So this is also an important data to understand if it was an early claim, was it a genuine early claim or was it a fraud, right? So that all information is also generally available with all the companies. And of course, the total claim amount. What was the claim amount for that particular claim, right? So this is the information. Now, second is customer data. So you have customer demographical information. You have age, marital status, occupation, income, his location, and pre-existing conditions. On the policy, as we saw, you have product type, product name, sum insured, now deductible. So sometimes some of the policies have something called as deductible, whereas if you file a claim of say 3 lakhs, right? And your sum insured is 6 lakh, you filed a claim for a 3 lakh. Ideally, it should get covered. But then there is a condition that whatever claim you file, 15% of it you have to pay from your own pocket, right? So even if you file a claim for 3 lakh, which is within the sum insured limit, 15% of it has to be sort of, go from your own pocket, and rest of the amount will be reimbursed by the insurance company, right? And of course, the number of insured, how many people are insured in that particular policy, and credit score. So now, what do we mean by data prep? So first is data check, right? Not all the data will be accurate at all the time. In fact, the inverse is almost always true, right? There will be issues with the data, right? There will be challenges when you look at the data, right? So what are some of the popular challenges which you face when you're working on any sort of data? Is first is there will be a lot of fields which are empty, right? A lot of times you must have seen that whenever we fill up any form, there are fields which are mandatory, and then there are fields which are non-mandatory. Now, generally, we tend to not fill the non-mandatory fields, right? And that is expected. But sometimes, even in the mandatory field, if there are no quality control checks at the back end, sometimes people fill garbage values, right? And those get accepted. So when you look at that data retrospectively or as an organization, you won't be able to make sense of it, right? So there will be missing values, there will be inaccuracies, there will be inconsistencies in the data, right? So say, for example, if you look at here, so say in the claims data, right, I see this particular record. Say I see this particular record, right? So this is a customer ID 5, this is a policy ID. There has been a claim filed, right? But the claims within days, within how many days the claim was filed is missing, right? Now, if you look at this particular record, the customer ID 3, the number of claims is 0. There was no claim filed. So if this value is missing, it makes sense because there was no claim. So there is no question of claims within days information, right? But for this, there has to be a value which is missing. So how do you treat the value, right? Maybe should I assume something, or should I have to go back to the primary source and check for the accurate values? That is something which you have to decide. So in this case, since you cannot assume anything, you have to go back and re-verify. But say in this case, the customer income is missing. In such case, what you can do is that you can do a fair assumption that what his salary would be, right? So for example, the customer's age is 31, he's single, and he's a professional. So maybe he's a doctor or a lawyer, right? So in those cases, you can assume a certain value, right? And treat those values. Now, in case of outliers, so what do we mean by outlier? The value which is out of bound. So say, for example, this particular policy. So this particular policy, if you can see, the sum insured is 1 crore. And I know that I don't have any product which offers that kind of sum insured. So I know that this is a wrong value. So maybe I have to correct it or I have to remove the record. Whereas here, in this particular case, this person has taken a sum insured of 22 lakh, which is way more than the rest of the customer data, but it could be genuine. Maybe this customer has that sort of income and that sort of requirement, and hence he has opted for this. So this outlier is genuine. So how do you treat that outliers? Forms a part of data preparation. Maybe you treat these customers separately, you create a different model for this sort of customers, or you include this data into your model and maybe sort of approximate this value by various methods. There are various methods available, which you will see in tomorrow's session, right? So this is the outlier treatment. Now, final data preparation. So what will happen? Currently, this data is in disparate sources, right? Claims, customer policy, they are separate tables. So we use our data analytics expertise. Mostly it will be SQL based to create a single data set, right? So now you can see here, I've used something called as join concept to bring this data into a single data set, right? And what we have done here is that we have defined which are the cases are early claims and which are the cases are not of early claim, right? So if you can see here, this is what we have defined, because if the number of days are less than 365, it's an early claim. And if it's more than 365 or no claim was filed, then it's not an early claim, right? So this is our output variable. This is what we need to predict, right? So this all data is our input data, and this is what our target or the output variable is, right? So this is what data prep is all about. Now, what is modeling and evaluation? So we start with exploratory analysis, right? So in a nutshell, what happens is that you have this many data available, this many information, but is all the information relevant? No, right? So there are certain methodologies, there are certain approaches in analysis which helps us identify which information to use for building the model. So in this case, the columns which have been marked or highlighted in green are the relevant columns which we are going to use to build our model, and the columns which have not been marked will not be used for building the model, right? So this is called a variable selection. And the columns like this, these are the columns which you would feel that are important, but we cannot use while creating the model, right? Why? I will sort of elaborate on that at the end when we look at the execution part, right? Now, how would the model output look like? Once I implement a model, so in this case, see, this is a classification model, right? I need to, for each customer, I need to predict yes or no, right? I need to predict yes or no. Will it be an early claim, or will not there be an early claim? Right? It's a classification model, which is called supervised learning methodology, and within that, it's a classification. It's a classification problem where I need to classify each customer into yes or no, or 0 or 1, right? And for that, there are certain algorithms. So in this sort of cases, generally the algorithm which is used is logistic regression. There are other algorithms as well, but this is something which I have used in the past in this sort of scenario, and it has worked up to the expectation, right? And then there are certain metrics which are called model assessment metrics. Like accuracy is a very simple metric, right? Where I can see that out of total records, how many were correctly predicted, and accordingly I can calculate accuracy. And there are some other model assessment metrics which are specific to a particular algorithm, right? So in this particular case, we have something called as sensitivity, precision, and F-score, etc., right? This tells me how good my model is, right? So this is how we approach in terms of building the solution. Now, the nitty-gritties of it, how to build that model, how to make sure the model is robust and accurate, that we will see in more detail tomorrow when we take up a case study. Now that you have a model ready with you, the next step is deployment, where you deploy the model in production. So basically the flow is that you plan the problem, you create the modeling solution, you verify the solution or verify the model, you create a package. So you sort of convert it into a sort of software which can be deployed onto a server or onto a cloud system, wherever the requirement is. Then you release the solution, or you sort of implement the solution on the server. Then you configure it, and then you monitor it. So once you sort of deploy the solution, once you start predicting for the newer records, newer customer records, you have to monitor in terms of how has the output been, and is it really up to the expectation or not, right? So in our case, it will be early claims percentage is what we would use to monitor the performance. That has my early claim percentage come down? If it has come down, then maybe my model is really working well, right? The concept of data drift and concept drift. What happens is that the industries are dynamic, right? The environment, the consumer behavior is constantly changing. So sometimes what happens is that you have built a model on a certain assumptions, certain data, but as the time goes by, there is a change in the way data is captured. There is a change in a way a certain KPI or certain metric is calculated, right? Maybe the definition of early claims itself is changed after a certain time. Now the claims within 1 year are no more early claims. Maybe the claims within first 90 days are early claims, right? So accordingly, you have to change your model, right? Now let's see real-time execution flow. This will give you a very better idea. So what will happen now? Let's say I have a solution to predict an early claim. So what will happen? I will deploy that into a production, right? Now, say a customer enters an online portal, right, of my company. He fills the required information: age, income, dependents, how much sum insured, etc. He submits the information. The moment he submits, my portal calls the model or my solution via API, right? The data is passed as an input model. So this data will act as an input variable, right? Now my model will generate the output. So output will be in terms of 0 or 1, yes or no, right? Whether it is an early claim or not an early claim. So say for example, it's not an, if my model predicts that this customer is not going to file an early claim, then I will sort of let that customer continue the online journey and let him complete the policy purchase process. If the early claim prediction is true, right? If my model says, hold on, this customer comes with a certain risk, there might be a possibility of early claim, then his case will be handled with a manual intervention. So his application will be forwarded to an underwriting team within the company. Now, what would underwriting team do? They have certain rule sets, right? A business rule sets, which they will use to evaluate this customer. Then either they will, if they foresee that this customer is a very high risk customer, they can sort of decline the policy purchase, that we will not issue your policy, right? And that happens a lot of times, right? Or otherwise they will charge him a higher premium because there is a high risk with this customer, right? So this is how your solution fits in. This is how your solution adds value, right? Now, what are some of the challenges of analytics? Is that, of course, first is data availability, right? You want to create something, but you don't have a data for it. There is no use. Second is lack of quantifiable success criteria. You create a model, you deploy it, something is happening, but no one is able to measure that whether this model has added any value or not, right? And if that is not present, you will never know whatever you have done, is it really worth the money spent or not. Changing regulations. So especially in banking and insurance, they are regulated industries, right? You have RBI, you have IRDA regulating these industries. So if there is some change in the regulations, then that will sort of change your assumptions as well on which your solution is built. Benchmarking of current KPIs is not placed, right? If the company itself is not clear on how to measure early claims, how to measure, how to identify a fraud, then you cannot really build a foolproof solution. Dynamic business landscape, again, change in the external environment, consumer behavior, and working with emerging technologies. So the technology is rapidly evolving, and if you are not sure, if you don't know how to leverage that technology, you won't be able to create such solutions. So especially real-time solution would require some state-of-the-art technology infrastructure, right? Now, some of the benefits are, one, it brings a lot of transparency, right? It's a data-driven decision-making tool. It's a data-driven decision-making strategy. So it will be free of any human bias. No one can alter it. No one can manipulate it. It's purely data-based. It digitizes processes, right? It streamlines your process. Now with early claim prediction, there is no need to deploy people who would go to a person home, do a background check, and do some subjective thinking and come at a conclusion. The process is completely automated, digitized, streamlined, right? And of course, it results in improving profitability, reducing the cost, and you can scale this solution with a low incremental cost, right? So those are the challenges and benefits of the analytics. So this was, overview of analytics in a nutshell. Of course, this is just the beginning, and there is a lot more to analytics than what we saw today. It's constantly evolving, constantly changing, but this is what fundamental base is on which you can build your data science or machine learning expertise.